Today's video was chosen by the shadowy cabal that runs things behind the scenes on the channel, the patrons. If you'd also like to influence what Axe manga we cover next year, there will be a link to the Patreon in the description, where you can get some other cool perks like a little doodle or access to a Patreon-only podcast, which I plan to start soon. Nothing crazy, just something small. But let's not tarry and have a look at what manga they've picked for us. Full name, Agravity Boys. Start date, December 9th, 2019. End date, January 4th, 2021. Total chapters 51, including one epilogue chapter, 6 bonus chapters, all compiled into 7 volumes. The earliest venture I could find from Atsushi Nakamura is rumblings of a one-shot for River Drifting in Nuremberg for the 2007 Stoking Flame Award, though the first visual example I can find is his one-shot for Akamaru Jump's 2009 summer issue, Pinch Hitter Nakajima, which is a supernatural manga about fighting demons. He would follow this up with a summer stroll in Jump Next's 2012 spring issue for that year's New Generations Cup, which it got 3rd place for. The next year, in 2013, we would see Kurokuroku debut in one-shot form in the 4-5 double issue of that year, with it becoming a full series later on in the same year. Kurokuroku starts with a normal high school girl named Chiaki Yusa, who one day runs into a bunch of kappa and is saved by a strange boy. Then she's roped into a yokai hunting business. It wouldn't last long though, only going on for 18 chapters, where Nakamura wouldn't be seen until 2016's Kempa Trick, a handball one-shot. And finally, before starting Agravity Boys, Nakamura would publish Genar Diversion 3-1 in Jump Plus in 2018, which is the one-shot version of what we'll be discussing today. Agravity Boys would debut in issue 2 of 2020, set in the far future of 2119 AD. 4 boys would land on the planet Alpha Jumbro. The pilot Saga, the Dr. Chris, the physicist Geralt, and the engineer Baba Zulagi. We learn that days before, humanity would have been wiped out by a nuclear war, and the 4 were sent out to colonize planets to safeguard the future of humanity, and although a wormhole had expedited their long 20-year journey into just 3 days, they come to the striking realization that they may be the last 4 members of the human race, and they're all male. Then, God appears. And I'm going to treat it as casually as they do to highlight that this sci-fi epic is mostly a comedy, and a great one at that. Agravity Boys bathes in the absurd, perverse, and I think it's one of the weirdest and funniest manga Jump's ever had. To help illustrate this, the first dilemma the boys deal with is this god and how to use the elixir of reincarnation, the Genar Diversion, which was what the one-shot was based off of. This elixir could reincarnate any of the boys into a girl, and this information sends them all into a frenzy, and they all start to dote on Chris, the resident femboy of the group. Here we get to see some of the character dynamics, but more importantly these 3 pages depicting each boy trying to romance Chris, which I find really funny, since it's really leaning into this bit by covering each page in flowers and screen tones you might see in a BL manga. It's super gay. Chris, despite his femininity, is still a boy. These guys have also known each other for years, so it paints them both as extremely shallow, only focusing on looks or surface feminine aspects, and as massive horn dogs. But I do like the queerness on display here. This joke expands in some dumb ways, like how they start to equate penis size to possible breast size, which allows Baba to effectively get a similar spotlight to Chris, who is the most manly of the crew, but compared to Chris is by far more outspoken when he imagines the other boys lewdly looking at him, which is a great gag highlighting his more feminine side and personality despite his appearance. It's just great comedy utilizing these characters' appearances and established personalities to their fullest. This idea of gender transformation and mistaken gender identity also permeates the entire manga. I won't pretend it's excellent queer representation or anything, and it does this primarily as fuel for jokes, but I never really found it offensive. It's less making fun of the idea and more the actual characters who are pretty silly and stupid. In fact, I want to praise it a ton for allowing a feminine male character like Chris for existing. He is a main component of these jokes, he's commodified a bit and fetishized, but the manga also treats him with the most respect as well, as he's often the straight man of this quadrio. He's always kind, often doesn't involve himself in the boys' hijinks, but he also does get his silly moments too, so he's never left out. He's also the only boy not turned into a girl later in the manga, which is some fun irony, but I think it also cements his gender and characteristics somewhat. Chris is also just a genuine sweetheart, just look at him. Oh, and there is some genuine representation with Ash having a thing for Geralt, although this is mostly used for jokes as well. Still, he's pretty gay. But the fact that we have gay jokes in a Jump manga that aren't derogatory like in the 80s is great, and makes me feel seen somewhat. Now back to the plot, a lot of the manga also concerns itself with the boys dealing with basic survival issues early on, surveying the planet, finding food, establishing contact, and dealing with God, or the higher being as he's actually known as, who often tries to trick them or trip them up with various shenanigans. Jokes you can expect to see often relate to vulgar things like the boys being overly horny and having to fight their morals, dick jokes like the Jumbros, they're just living sentient penises who are the inhabitants of Alpha Jumbro. Also poop. That's a big one and it's really funny. The boys escorting Geralt back to the ship like an action movie so he can poop never fails to make me laugh. There's also a lot of great visual comedy like the censorship of Baba's dick. Faces in general are pretty funny, and in general everything is taken to extremes. It's all absurd and beautiful. Early on, another group of boys also gets established. Mr. President, a second ship, has landed on Alpha Jumbro. These don't get as much focus as the main four boys, but are great side characters that help fill out the manga and introduce more jokes. Their captain Grislow being the most focused on, but we'll save him for the end. Often the whole cast will get involved in bigger and crazier situations, and we get to see more of Atsushi Nakamura's weird little universe, which is full of interesting alien designs, insanely well drawn sci-fi city spreads, and all sorts of weird other things. Gravity Boys is full of fun and weird escapades, like Chris becoming a live streamer, Geralt catfishing a super hot intergalactic policewoman who wants them all dead, the backstory chapters involving school-wide fights where people shove broccoli up each other's asses, the entire gradual foreshadowing and future chapters on this in-universe sitcom called Masaru, which has at least 12 seasons and sounds like subsequently the best and worst show ever made. And who could forget about Chocolat the Otter, a genuinely heartwarming chapter where the crew look after an injured otter. Or the entire baseball arc, a game some aliens have which is strikingly similar to baseball, and we get stats for every character. Them winning this baseball game then leads to them establishing a mining company, and a whole new corporate mining arc begins, featuring its own big four evil CEOs the boys must now face, which culminates in the boys needing to transform into girls to save Chris. Oh, and all of this is so they can get enough money to buy a time machine so they can go back and prevent the Earth from being destroyed, by the way. A huge part of why Agravity Boys works and is so great is because it builds on its comedy beats so much. It incorporates individual character gags into a broader narrative, which is itself a joke. And like the baseball arc going into the corporate arc, it has entire joke arcs that feed into the next. It all just builds and builds, keeping these same core gags while introducing new ones, which are so absurd it's constantly fresh and funny, and Nakamura knows when to bring back old jokes or details for maximum effect, like the Masaru gags. The best example of this though comes in Agravity Boys' final big arc, the Penis World arc, where Grislow, who has convinced himself that Chris has been a girl this entire time, finally finds out the truth, that Chris has a penis. This is played as the most dramatic part of the entire manga. Rain pours down, the forest darkens, and Grislow runs headlong into it. He then falls into some mud and he passes out, thinking of Chris and penises. I think it's also important to note that this isn't played like Grislow is disgusted. He's just so shocked by the events, and the focus is on his hyperfixation on the idea of penises, which in a way makes this even more gay. It's then Agravity Boys plays its strongest card, introducing its true power system. By having intense thoughts about penises, they can manifest themselves into a humanoid form, like Bankai from Bleach, and here we're introduced to Lustro, Grislow's penis. This arc straddles the line at being the most absurd and silliest shit ever conceived. The penises have attributes that have strength and weaknesses like Pokémon, but Agravity Boys makes a really good and silly point with all of this. Me saying penis so much probably has you smiling, and yeah, I can see you smiling. Don't say you're not smiling, I can see you smiling. You're probably smiling even more now. And if you don't think penises are funny, then seriously, what are you doing? Life is for living and for laughing at penis jokes. I think there is also an undercurrent of self-love here too. It's kind of sweet when Lustro tells Grislow that even when he's alone, he'll always be alright because he has his penis, and that's because he has himself. You'll be okay because deep down, you have you looking out for you, and when Grislow thinks maybe it was all a dream, he then unleashes his level 1 penis magic, Wind Saber. His penis is always with him and providing him immense power. The boys get to learning their own penis magics just in time too, because the Cosmo Eater is on its way to devour Alpha Jumbro, but only one of them is strong enough to defeat it, Baba, the wielder of an omni-element penis. But defeating it comes at a great cost. It's then Baba dies. The finale of Agravity Boys is kind of sad. Losing Baba is treated very seriously, and it's cool to see the characters react emotionally to this, although they soon are told he's been split into 108 fragments, which they need to collect, which with the help of all their friends they've made throughout the story they do. Baba then returns and the boys defy gravity. It's a really nice and fun ending. Agravity Boys would last a strong 50 chapters in Jump, ending just before its anniversary, and for an Axe manga that's an incredibly good run, and it has some interesting circumstances that led to this. Kimetsu no Yaiba, Haikyuu, Act Age, Promise Neverland, Yuna of the Haunted Hot Springs, We Never Learn, and Chainsaw Man would all end between Agravity Boys beginning and ending. This period of time was a massive exodus for larger manga from the magazine, which made 2020 an interesting climate for manga. It let things like Undead Unluck, which didn't have the best sales or reception, coast for a while until it established itself better. And it also likely led to Agravity Boys getting a bit more time than it usually would have. It was a manga that I don't think would have lasted otherwise, since its jokes catered to being a bit more mature and crass, which is fine in Jump and can exist, as Jump does love things like poop jokes, but the sci-fi setup, abundance of dialogue, and the general vibe of the manga don't really give off Jump vibes to me. In a different publication, I think it could have even run a lot longer, but I'm really glad it was in Jump. It was odd, out of place, but also showcased a lot of boyish humor, and the Penis World arc I feel kind of solidifies itself thematically as a boys manga, which fits well in Jump. We could have had more adventures and chapters for sure, but Nakamura ended it really well, to the point where it didn't feel rushed, and the pacing as it went on through various arcs in its second half, especially near the end, was it at its very best. As usual though, manga need to end for new manga to start up in Jump, and as 2020 began, newer manga began to populate the magazine, like Sakamoto Days, Mashal, and Undead Unluck, which were becoming more solidified hits, so eventually it just had to go. I've been talking about Agravity Boys for a while now, and since this was voted in by patrons, what do they have to say about the series? And I can't start with anyone but Mayu, who is probably one of the biggest Agravity Boys fans of all time, who puts it as their favourite manga. They also mention loving the characters and their chemistry especially, which is definitely what makes this manga so special. Some favourite standout moments include the whole Penis World arc and Baba's sacrifice. The part that drew Mayu in though was chapter 3 and its "I took a dump" line. It's seriously iconic, and I think it goes to show that poop jokes can be some of the best. They also point out that this was some much needed comic relief for 2020, and in hindsight with the pandemic, yeah. Mayu brought up so many favourite panels and moments, many I've touched on in this video, and they also commented on the volume extras, shedding some light on characters like Volk, who get some more flashing out there, as well as there being cool extra design sheets and bonuses. I really agree with their TLDR too. It was fucking funny and I'll miss it dearly. Mayu also shared a ton of bonus material and memes from the volumes, and if you're a big fan of the series, consider joining the Discord. There's a lot of big Gravity Boys fans there, and everyone just loves talking about it. Next up we have Harley the Apothecary, who went in only knowing about the fabled Penis World arc. They found it funny the entire way through, with it not letting up. Personal favourites for them were the live streaming chapters, the Masaru TV show, and the chapter where the higher being is explored more. This is something Mayu also really loved, with the higher being this pretty underrated character in the grand scheme of things that acts as an author insert and just messes with the boys all the time, and it leads to a lot of fun meta jokes as well, which I also really appreciated reading this time around. On the sentiment of it being axed and getting enough runtime, they point out that there could have been much more left to explore, like the backstories which came in volume extras, and ongoing subplots with the higher being and Monica could have gone on for much longer. While I'm happy where it ended, I do agree with Harley that it wasn't running out of steam and probably could have gone on longer with ease. With some negatives, they do point to Ash being not very well realised, with his jokes of being obsessed with Geralt kind of a worse version of Grislow and Chris. They also found the Genar Diversion arc with the boys gender bend to girls not very funny, with them criticising the personalities of their girl versions being a bit too stereotypical. I'm not sure I fully agree or disagree here, since I definitely see some potential issues, but they weren't transformed for too long and I did find it funny overall. It's also cool to see the boys turn into girls for Chris's sake, when originally they wanted the opposite to happen in the very first chapter. It's some fun cyclical writing. Harley also ranked every single chapter on a tier list, and I also commend them for this effort. Next we have Cody, who thinks Gravity Boys is easily one of the best comedy manga that's been in Jump, as well as one of its best axed manga. They think it had good art, a great and lovable cast, and funny jokes. Like me, Cody is also pretty happy where it ended, saying it could have maybe gotten old if it reached to 100 chapters or so. It's the perfect length for a manga to have enough fun moments and characters which you can fondly remember, while also wanting a little bit more, which I think leaves you satisfied at the end. They also point to Chris being one of their favourite characters in all of manga, which everyone agrees with, and if you don't,
sorry you got twisted up in this scene. From where you're kneeling must seem like an 18-karat run of bad luck. Truth is, the game was rigged from the start.
We also have some bonus comments from the Discord, with Shiranasu saying it was funny as hell and that all manga don't have to be super long, which I agree with. Gravity Boys had a good run without being too short or too long. Conversely, Chizu would have liked more chapters, which I also wouldn't say no to. They say it's also a cult classic and they love the Penith arc.
I slammed my penis in the car door.
Which Sarah stopped by and enjoyed the series, but I think presented some valid criticism involving the gender changing aspects. It's a trope that might need re-examining a bit in modern times, and by that I don't mean it shouldn't be done. Frankly, I'd love to see it more. But the idea of characters feeling dysphoric due to their gender being changed is interesting. I'm not sure Gravity Boys is the manga for that though, since it's so comedy focused. Sarah also highlighted some parts of the Penis World arc possibly feeling a bit exclusory, and I think if it had more time, I'd love to see it fleshed out a bit more. I know it's a silly joke and the manga itself pokes fun at its own logic, but I love some of the thematic ideas of the penis arc with self-love. Also, imagine someone without a penis having an inner penis and penis magic. I think that would be inclusive and just fit anyway with the manga's sense of humor, since it's so absurd. Which Sarah also really loved chocolate, which I approve of immensely. And finally we have Manga Crash, who I'll let speak about Gravity Boys in his own words since he's such a big fan.
In 2020 the world closed. It put me locked inside my own home. But as the world taketh, it also giveth. And in 2020 the world gave me Gravity Boys. It's a story just about 4 friends hanging around at a time where I missed my 3 pals the most. It's a gag manga that fully thrives on the main cast's friendship. These characters are not only great and funny, but they have a genuine chemistry with each other. There's no doubt in my mind that they were friends for a long time, and that feeling grabs you. It makes you part of the gang, and that helped me. It helped me a lot. And now, 3 years removed from its cancellation, I still find myself looking back, reminiscing of this manga, missing the boys. As someone who follows the series weekly, that was there with the rest of its small community, hoping for the best batch after batch after batch until the eventual news hit, I have a lot of memories associated with this manga. To me, Agravity Boys is my X manga. It's the one I love above all others. The one I have the biggest connection to, and the one that really reminds me of why we read these kind of titles, even if they end up cutting short. I miss them. I miss them a lot.
What Crash is saying here is what this video series is all about, and a huge reason why I loved Axe Manga. There's so much value in these series, even if they're not super popular or last a long time, even if they're cut short. They're often filled with unique characters, artwork and ideas that are someone's favourite, and Agravity Boys is one of those Jump Axe Manga that exemplifies this most, with it having a small but dedicated fanbase years after it's ended. It's a truly special manga that, despite everything, is still relevant and still amazing, and I'm glad it got to run in Jump. Definitely go sub to Crash, by the way. He makes a ton of cool videos on manga, with a lot of it being in Shonen Jump. I think anybody who enjoys my videos will really like his. Following Agravity Boys ending, Atsushi Nakamura has been very quiet, with no new series or one-shot being released. He is decently active on Twitter though, where he supports fellow authors by retweeting their works, and he sometimes draws fan art. Notably, he did some when Gundam The Witch from Mercury was airing, so we got some really cool pieces. While I would love for him to have made a new manga, the fact that he's a G-Witch fan kind of makes it up for me personally. Hopefully we'll see him sometime again in the future though. And that ends today's video on Agravity Boys. This is one of my favourite Jump manga period, and a lot of others as you've heard. I'm super glad I've gotten to cover it, and I implore anyone watching this to read or reread it. It was a blast to experience it again. You can find it on the Shonen Jump app, where the first 3 chapters are free to read. If you want similar videos to this, I have a whole series of Axe Files on the channel where I delve into Jump's other cancelled manga, but if you want something more historical, maybe check out my History of Shonen Jump series where I delve into Jump's oldest manga year by year. I also recently released a big comedy manga collab video featuring a ton of other people talking about their favourite funny manga, which I think you'll enjoy if you've made it this far into the video. If you really love what I do, you can also support me on Patreon for as little as $1 a month, which you can thank for this video existing. Every now and then I'll be taking suggestions directly from patrons and spotlighting what they have to say, so come join if that sounds like fun and you'd like to influence the channel. You'll also be featured at the end of my videos too, with the $3 or above tier, with a little doodle like Kinocha, Cody, Kaizuku Gairu, Soroquel Zero, Holly the Apothecary, Mayu, It's Fako, Elias Domansky, and Lay Sloggett. Thank you all for supporting me and what I make. And as always, thank you so much for watching, remember to be kind, and take care.